All right, cool. Welcome everybody. Okay, we're here at Gunya on the road, and we're at beautiful Penderonga with Luke. And Luke's been like, if you look at the whole thing that's been going on since the beginning of 2020, it's splintered quite quickly into so many different layers. And so all of us rode different layers. Like I took the astrology layer, and I've been researching that really heavily over the last year. Now, the layer that Luke chose to take was from the Qanon, which a lot of us started with. And so, like I know I've lost touch with where they're up to in the whole story and what's been going on. And yet Luke's followed that thread. And so I thought what we'd do today is follow the thread of QAnon and what Luke's observed as this path has unveiled itself. I mean, we're a year and a half on, just about. And so, yeah, so Luke, if you can tell us, well, let's start with what brought you to QAnon, because I know what attracted me. What attracted you to start viewing it?
I suppose. Hello, everybody. I suppose my avenue into that was I've always liked having, I suppose, a little bit of my own understanding, real or not, in I suppose a bigger picture. What's the umbrella, over our society? How does it work? Why have we struggled as citizens of a society to actually make the real changes required over the last 20 years? Why is it that it hasn't happened? We have amazing technology. We have all the skills. There's green armies out there. There's engineers out there. We have got everything we need to implement the required changes for benefit of humanity, but it has not happened. And it's kind of like, to me, I'd always felt, that it's has not been allowed
There
to
we
happen.
go. So you had your theory that you'd come to by looking at everything, and yep.
And then so over the last 20 years of mind boggle with yourselves and Pete's and things like that, and we've been going down rabbit holes and following threads for for many years now, and we start to understand of Illuminati and who they are, and not exactly
maybe
how
explain
they
to people, for those that don't understand, because a lot of people have heard the Illuminati. It's a common word that most people could say something about. But let's start with the platform. Who are the Illuminati?
Okay, well, in all of this, before I go any further, I'm not claiming that I'm an expert on any of this. I've done some research, and I know that there's people out there that have done way more research than what I have. So for me, I feel like I've got a reasonable general grasp on it, and so I can't go right into full specifics. But basically, to my understanding, I would refer to the Illuminati as a very small group of controlling elite, basically, who are kind of like the puppeteers, the construct, the main construct behind just about every facet of human settlement on the planet.
Are we allowed to mention names, or is there any benefit to that? Or
I don't think there's any. I mean, there's Rockefellers, Rothschilds,
Murdochs.
Murdoch's
On a lower level.
Lower level. But then, it's an odd one because Murdoch is being pointed out as, you know, a baddie in a mainstream media setup that is basically owned by 3 individuals.
Yeah.
So the whole global media
is owned by 3 individuals.
Basically comes down to 3 individuals. And I don't believe that Murdoch is one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
so they're controlling what people hear.
It's kind of like, yes, you know, the narrative at the moment is, gee, mainstream media's full of shit.
Yeah.
And so what mainstream media and the construct are doing are going, yeah, look at Murdoch.
Yeah, right.
you know,
distraction.
Just boom, take the focus off what
away.
we're doing, and let's just put it onto one poor little, put it onto one dude to cop all the
scapegoat.
The scapegoat.
Yeah. It is fascinating though, going back to your original beginning of the dialogue, was that... Oh, I lost my train of thought, damn it. Oh, I hate it when that happens.
It's kind of like that with that understanding of with the understanding, I suppose, of that bigger picture.
Yeah, that you were why.
That we are, you know, even our governments, you know, and I live in Australia, so my reference will be, you know, I've been following American politics for the last 12 months very closely since the coronavirus.
So what's your take on it? You know, particularly that January to March period where the inauguration was supposed to hapen, and from
this
QAnon
year.
and your background of what you've researched.
So I suppose the first, what I'd sort of like to, you know, the question for most of people is, you know, who is Q? And when the media start to actually ask that question publicly, I believe that we will have reached a major tipping point in the scenario that we're on. The mainstream media at this point in time are still going gangbusters on QAnon theory and QAnon conspiracy theory, and trying to do their best to suppress and poo-poo it so that people do not get involved in it.
Do they ever pull it off, or they can't?
There will come a time when it's impossible, basically.
Right.
Because to my understanding, with everything that's unfolding, it's actually all been predicted and scripted by Q. There isn't actually anything there. You know, it's kind of like the QAnon movement.
Yeah.
If we're referring to that, that's actually, to me, understanding it a bit better, shows an indication of lack of understanding. There is Q.
Yeah.
And in a moment I'll give my best understanding of what I believe that to be. And then there are Anons.
Okay, so they're 2 separate ones. Or are they connected?
There are anonymous digital soldiers who are all around the world.
Oh, wow.
All right. So basically all Q does is put out a post. It isn't directed to anybody. It isn't, you know, dear so-and-so, can you find out the answer to this question? It just poses a question or lists a series of events or possible events.
Is it possible that Q could be a computer that's already programmed with the messages to be released at each moment in time, because they were able to time travel forward and see what was backwards and see what was going to happen?
To me, that's probably the closest to my understanding of what Q is.
Okay, yeah.
So I believe that Q is definitely US military intelligence.
Ah.
Within that, US military is made up of many people. And
Like
majors, generals,
Yep,
corporal sergeants,
yep.
and like with any organisation, it's fundamentally has, you know, a purpose, a function,
Yep.
provides a service, does its thing. Now, in most organisations, whether it's publicly owned or privately owned, there are good people in there,
Yeah.
and there's some baddies in there. And we find that with most corporations and organisations. Generally speaking, people want to be good, people want to be doing the right thing, but it only takes a couple of bad eggs in a system to make certain decisions that everybody has to sort of abide by, that can, you know, shift the direction, shift the narrative, shift the vibe of the thing.
And so you think it's the military that are behind the...
I believe that there was a photo shoot with Donald Trump in early 2020 when Donald Trump suggested that, you know, this is the calm before the storm, and the media sort of went, crazy.
Yep.
And Donald Trump's standing there, and he had, I'm not exactly sure, but there were about 10 generals.
Oh, really? In the photo behind him.
On his flanks behind him, saying, yeah, this is basically the team. Now, to make this conversation go a bit easier, I'm sort of referencing that mob as the white hats.
Okay. Oh, so that's where the white hats come in.
Okay. The white hats, it's kind of like cowboys and Indians in the old days. The cowboys that had the white hats on were the goodies, and the ones that had the black hats on were the baddies.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You might just need to, just for a second, give a little bit of a background on Donald Trump for the listeners who don't understand the white warrior he's been.
Okay.
Just to bring them up to date with where you're going with this for credibility wise, so they understand the whole picture.
My very simple understanding is that basically within the military, the white hats have been planning, tactical responses to the taking over of the American Republic by the black hats, which has been an incremental, staged process for hundreds of years. Okay.
Maybe part of the agenda of the Masons.
Well, that's the black hats, and yes, there has been an agenda. There's definitely been an agenda.
And so the white hats have had this plan for a while.
So, and particularly since the assassination of JFK, that was kind of around the point when a particular group of people within the military have gone, hang on.
Yeah.
This is not right. This is not right. There are other influences apart from our structured governments and our military tweaking things, and it's in a direction that is not good. Okay, and so that's back in the 60s, 70s.
Right, okay, gee.
All right.
Which is interesting as the beginning of the change of into the Aquarium Age.
Correct.
Just as a by-side.
Yeah.
Yep, go on.
So this particular epoch of time that we're in now has been marked on the calendar for definitely hundreds of years.
Yeah.
For the black hats agenda.
Right.
Okay.
For the white hats that came on board. And so how did they connect with Trump? What was the connection there?
Well, basically, part of their, I suppose, strategy was to stuff up the Black Hats plan.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And so and 2016 was a very important
Pivotal moment
in the Black Hats plan. It was kind of like Hillary Clinton was supposed to win.
Mm.
All right, they never thought she'd lose. Is the saying out there? Because they're basically, to my understanding, there's like a within the 200, 300, whether it could even be 2,000 year, 3,000 year plan for this point in time. That 2016 election was kind of like within like a 16-year plan, so that by the end of 2030, they had achieved their goal. And in order for that to happen, Hillary Clinton had to win.
Right.
Okay. And so, to my understanding, that's where the
White hat
election fraud
became apparent.
It's the White Hats have known about election fraud for many years prior to 2016. It has been going on for a very long time, rigged elections. And so it's kind of like what the military did was what the White Hats did was basically go, right, we can see your game. We're going to play with you now.
Yeah, the game's on.
And so I actually believe, or I feel, I haven't read or seen any evidence of, it's just a hunch.
Yeah.
That basically Donald Trump, who was very good mates with JFK Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Who had vowed to, sort of seek revenge on his father's death.
Right.
That Trump had been was in a circle of mates that were supportive of the generals, the White Hat generals within the military.
Ah, so the connection's already there.
And so Donald Trump was put in and supported by, I believe, as part of the White Hat plan by the US military White Hats.
Right.
Okay. And that they even possibly rigged the 2016 election to get Trump in. Okay. Now, what that has basically done, so whether it was rigged or not, Trump got in 2016 and had 4 years. Now, basically, how the Black Hats, deep state, have been working over the last couple of 100 years is their plan isn't obvious because they're very small changes to our societal structure, influences and things, incrementally over a long period of time. We as citizens, we don't notice what's happening. We don't notice. It's just kind of like, oh, gee, we had a lot more freedom 20 years ago. Haven't noticed it, but wow, we can't do this now, we can't do this now, we can't do this now. Okay, so if the Black Hats plan was, sort of had to crank up and they're in their final 16 years, Trump's basically been put in for 4 of those years, and he basically blocked, stopped, and reversed everything that they'd done over the last 50, 100 years.
Can you give us examples? Or like National Reserve?
Reducing taxes, changing using the emergency powers to take the control of
Rothschild's
the
bank.
finances from the World Bank and putting it into Treasury.
Yeah.
All those kinds of things. Wanting to give the people directly, hand out money to support the people, not the businesses and not the corporations.
Put a wall up to stop the children being brought in for child trafficking.
Putting the wall up. Yep. That wall was to assist in the control and the elimination of human trafficking. And I don't want to go into the human trafficking side of things. I believe that's going to unfold for people in their own reality, in their own time, and I'm not going to. But please do your own research in that to start to soften the blow.
It'll change you, wake you up all of a sudden.
So what we're in now, with Joe Biden as the president, they're basically now well behind in their plan. They're totally in catch-up mode, so they have to speed everything up.
And so how does the vaccinations fit in with that? There we go, we're off YouTube. Never mind.
Okay, before I answer that question, I'd like to just pedal back a moment to give my understanding of a bit more of how Q works and how the Anons work, which will then
set the platform
for that question. Q, I believe, is a and possibly the largest quantum computer on the planet. And it's kind of like the white hats have access to that. And you can look at and you can Google things like Project Looking Glass and things like that, because they are all part of the white hat tools that they have access to. The black hats don't have a quantum computer with the same power, with the same capacity as what the white hats have. Now, with quantum computing, they have the capacity to, through algorithm and deduction and things, predict future events. And obviously, the larger the computer, the further into the future that computer has the capacity to go, and obviously, the more accurate it has to be with the information that it comes up with. So, to my understanding, the white hats have a quantum computing system that can access 4, 5, 6 years into the future with quite accurate results. The black hats have only the capacity to sort of go a couple of months.
They're limited. So very Saturnian versus very Aquarian, Uranian.
Now, what that means is the white hats are able to actually see what's going to happen. And so without doing kind of like, we've all watched Back to the Future shows and Doctor Who shows and time travel things. And you know that you don't sort of stuff too much with the past to alter the future, and you don't do too much now to alter the way things go. But what the white hats have the capacity to do is basically, through Q, Q is doing these posts and saying, he's the way that those posts come through. The anons then pick up that information and research it to try to decipher what that information means.
Oh, so a bit like
because it comes out basically as gobbledygook. It doesn't really mean anything to the layperson. But when you start to work within codes and things like that, Q is basically telling us
the future,
what is going to unfold to a timeline,
right?
And how it's going to unfold.
Have you, in the time you've been researching this, come to a moment where it's come to the point which they've told you about on Q?
Correct. Yeah, very often.
Oh, really? Can you share one of those?
It's
happened.
Give
us an example.
Many. Well, fraud in the 2020 election.
Nice.
Biden actually being elected.
So Q actually put that forward.
Yep. Biden having cognitive issues.
Haven't they said him dying before he finishes his term and the lady taking over?
How do you slip one in? So it's basically a way of potentially trying to get maybe Hillary Clinton or possibly even Michelle Obama in, is by putting up Joe Biden. Right. Having him make a huge amount of changes, executive orders, blah, 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 which is basically what that's doing is that's actually waking people up, because going back to that 16-year plan, which is now being condensed to, you've got to push it in 12 years, you're 4 years behind. People can now see what they're doing. Because it's not stretched out over time. It's all being condensed. And people are now seeing, oh, shit, there is a plan, you're pushing through with it, and we're not actually liking what we're seeing. We don't want it. Yeah. So it's actually what Donald Trump did was absolutely fantastic. And all through that, with all his gaffes and silly remarks, there were no gaffes. There are no silly remarks. It is all code. He is talking to the patriots, those that know. Is that just like, say, swallowing disinfectant? Well, that's MMS. That's hydroxychloroquine. That is a very, very simple, cheap cure for COVID-19.
And we can pretty well guarantee that YouTube's putting all the information up why you shouldn't have it. Just so you know, if you don't already.
And so any of the information about bombarding hydroxychloroquine as an appropriate pharmaceutical for the remedy for COVID-19 is bollocks. It works. And the last thing that the pharmaceutical companies want to know is that there's a cure that anybody can go to a local doctor, and for $35
done.
It's done. Because that will take all of the fear out. Nobody will be scared, and their plan won't be able to push through with their plan, because you have to be suspended in fear, disruption and chaos in order for the plan to be pushed through as smooth as possible.
That's right. It's so transparent.
And so in that, there are many examples of the Q conspiracy theories coming true.
So where do you see from here? Like, if, for the average person at home, obviously like-minded to be listening to this.
Yeah.
What's your... Oh, that was a fly. What's your... So, what have you seen in Q that's coming up that would be good to be aware of?
At the moment, so basically, because my understanding, this is war. We are in war.
So the World War III.
Yeah. So World War III, and it's on many, many levels. There's obviously, and first, there's the information war.
Okay. Yeah.
Because basically the fact that
YouTube, Facebook.
this would not be allowed to be presented on YouTube
You won't
means
see it
that
on
there's
YouTube.
and that there'd be countering information on YouTube.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Is pretty blatantly obvious. We are in an information warfare, information overload, and so obviously now discretion is going to, and research is imperative for each individual to do their own, to formulate their own understandings of it. Because there are so many rabbit holes and we resonate with different rabbit holes, it's impossible for everybody to have a handle on everything.
No.
Q is a quantum computer. I mean,
Yeah.
well, Q is possibly a quantum computer.
Yeah, many notions.
Many notions. That's just the one that sits with me the most comfortable. To I suppose to reinforce that, we are coming into quantum.
Right, okay.
Quantum,
so why don't we explore
everything.
quantum? Let's explain for those that because quantum's it's so hard to understand and yet it's so easy. You know, if we go back to string theory, are you familiar with that angle of it? Or what would
not
that we're all interconnected, that there's a string attaching every single atom in every single way. And so that and then we lose the laws of gravity and Newton's law, first law of whatever it was, you know, and we go into the electromagnetic field rather than the what Einstein talked about, you know, with his gravity. You know, we shift away from that whole paradigm and walk into the quantum. What's your take on quantum?
I suppose I'm not very technical savvy and things like that, but I suppose my understanding of quantum, particularly quantum computing and using quantum technology within computers, it's kind of like what the Commodore computer in 1982 was to the Apple laptop in 2020. Is basically what the same analogy as to what the modern day laptop now will be the Commodore computer in 10, 15 years' time.
Or even sooner.
Or even sooner, because quantum, it's exponential. And the amount of information that we're going to be able to process, the nanotechnology, etc., the AI, all of that sort of stuff, it's on an exponential growth rate, and that is relative to the quantum systems coming in to
the white hats.
It's the quantum systems are available to anybody. At the moment, it's all very expensive, but that's only going to take very, very short periods of time to.
Is the quantum computer potentially linked in with these medibeds that Elon Musk is talking about?
It's the medibeds, but more primarily, one of the things that is actually happening right now, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of us feel like we're just in like pause mode, particularly from an Australian federal politics point of view. It's just kind of like it's in pause. We are moving into a quantum banking system.
Oh, okay. So let's just stop there for part one and let's start part two with quantum banking.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks, Luke. We're just going to have a quick cuppa and then we're going to go on to quantum banking.